In this lesson, we'll learn why selections are important and how we can begin to make basic selections here inside of Photoshop. All right, fantastic. So this is the Lesson 12 Begin file. If you want to open this up and follow along, then feel free to go ahead and do just that. Now, when it comes to moving things around a layer, you saw in the previous lesson how we can come in with our Move tool, and we can begin to move things around a layer. But what if we only want to move a portion of what is currently on a layer? Then if that's the case, we need to go ahead and limit the area that's being moved by making a selection. So in the case of this particular example here, I have these tiles and I have this paint layer. Maybe I'd like to come in and paint only a specific number of these tiles. Maybe we want to start to create a pattern here. So let's come down here underneath the Move tool and grab the rectangular Marquee tool. Now the keyboard shortcut for this is M. But with this tool, we can come over and just do basically exactly what the tool name specifies. We can draw what's known as a rectangular marquee. Now, this particular marquee is indicated by this little dashed line that appears, and it almost appears to move. As a matter of fact, you may hear some older Photoshop users refer to this as marching ants. So this is how Photoshop represents a selection. Now, to deselect this area, we can come up here to the Select menu and hit Deselect, but I tell you, I always use this keyboard shortcut personally, Control D, and that'll deselect that area. Now, once we have an initial selection made, let's just come in here and draw out a selection. I'm going to select this tile right here. Once we've made that selection, if we want to add to a selection, we can come up here in the Control panel and use one of these different selection mode buttons. This one right next to it will add to the selection. So if I come in and select that, I can come in and draw another selection here to select the tile next door, and it's going to add to the previous selection. Now there's a button to the right of that that subtracts from a selection. I can come over and subtract that tile off. And then we have this button right here, which creates an intersection. So basically, it looks for an area where two selections overlap. And that's what the resulting selection is. So if I came in and selected like so, it's only going to look at the areas where those two selections overlapped. Let me undo that with a Control Z, because if I make a selection with an intersect mode that is not overlapping, we're going to get an error message from Photoshop saying that, hey, no pixels were selected here. So there we go, and you can see my selection's gone. So I'm going to switch back over here to just new selection mode, and let me just let you know that these different selection modes can be accessed by using keyboard shortcuts. So let's come over here and draw out a selection for this tile right here. And now if I wanted to make a selection of this tile, I could come over here and just simply hold down the Shift key. Now when I do that, notice there's a little plus sign that appears right there next to my mouse cursor. But if I come in now at this point, I can draw out another selection. And we can continue drawing selections here. Now, in this case, I didn't quite get this selection right where I wanted it, so before I release my mouse cursor, you should know that you can actually hold down your space bar and you can reposition this selection. So that's something that's very, very useful when drawing selections. And if I release my spacebar, I can continue dragging out that selection. Now, I've added two more selections to this. So at this point, we could come over, maybe grab our brush, and just kind of paint in this orange color, like so. And we'll go ahead and hit Control D to deselect that. Now when you're making selections like this, let's actually come over here and hide our tiles, and I'm actually going to just make a quick selection with my Marquee tool, my Marquee selection, and we'll just hit the Delete key so that I've deleted that paint. And I'll hit Control D to deselect that. All right, fantastic. So now this particular image has some circles in it, and we can't really select a circle with a rectangular Marquee tool, but there is an elliptical Marquee tool hidden underneath this. So you can see it's right here if I tap and hold down, and we can actually get to that by hitting the Shift key and then the keyboard shortcut for the Marquee tool, the M key. So if I hit Shift M, it's going to cycle to the next tool underneath. If we tap and hold, you see they both have M's next to them here. So now in drawing maybe an elliptical marquee kind of around the perimeter of this circle, if we tap and drag, you'll see here that this draws sort of an oval shape, just like so. Now, if we wanted a perfect circle or a perfect square with the rectangular marquee tool for that matter, we can add the shift key to our selection drawing. So if I hold shift, you can see that's going to draw a perfect circle for me. Well, that's pretty good. So let's go ahead and deselect and start maybe up here somewhere. And this is going to become difficult to draw just the selection we want because of the fact that we're trying to just draw it out from the corner across the pixels we're targeting. Let me deselect again because I want to show you a trick here with the selection tool that's really going to be helpful for you. So rather than start up here in the corner, what we can do is we can start here in the center. And if I go ahead and hold down the shift key, again drawing a perfect circle, and then I add the alt key to that, you'll see here that I'm dragging out the perfect circle selection from the center. So if I come out here and drag that like so, we're about there, and I'll release it, you can see I've made almost the selection I need. Now with my my elliptical marquee still selected, I can come in and I can move this selection around, just like so. And you can see that's how we can begin to get very precise selections of simple shapes like this one. Now, in the case of this particular circle, what happens if we only wanted to select this concrete ring right here that goes around? So that would mean we would need to come in and deselect some of these other shapes. Well, you can see here there's just a simple circle right here. So if we come in and again, we tap in the center and begin to draw out our, or try to draw out our selection rather, you can see here how it's just moving the current selection. We're going to need to hold down the Alt key, and that's going to give us that little minus sign next to our cursor. So if I go ahead and hold down the Alt key and tap and begin to drag out another circle here. Now I do want to hold down the Shift key. I've released the Alt key for right now, so I'm going to add the Shift key so I get a perfect circle. And now if I add the Alt key to this selection again, it's going to switch that over so that I'm actually dragging that out from the center. So it's going to be really easy to line up with kind of that concrete edge. There we go. And you can see basically I have come in and I've subtracted the center out of the original circle that I drew. All right, fantastic. So let's go ahead and deselect that. I want to move to another example here for you. I want to go ahead and skip this image right here. Let's come down and take a look at these stone wall image down here. So obviously these stones are very organic shaped, and it's going to be very hard to make selections out of these using either the rectangular or the elliptical marquee tools. Now there is, on the other hand, another selection tool that's going to help you make this type of more of an organic selection. And it's right below that elliptical marquee. It's called the Lasso tool. Now the keyboard shortcut for this is L, but what this allows us to do is come in and basically draw free-form shapes for our selections. Now, this is where you're working on maybe a pressure-sensitive tablet of some kind is going to become very advantageous to you. I'm working on a Cintiq, actually a Wacom Cintiq 22 HD right now, so I've got a very helpful benefit of being able to draw right on the screen and make my selections here. So you can see if I were to come over here, we can basically just draw free-form selections for each of these rocks, just like so. Now, let's go ahead and deselect again. I'm going to come back to this triangular image, kind of with these triangular shapes in it. Now, in the case of these shapes, the lasso tool is not going to be very helpful because we're going to have to come in and really try hard to basically draw straight lines with it. Again, that's not going to be much of a help for us. So there is actually, though, another form of the lasso tool that I want to show you in this lesson. If we tap and hold or hit Shift L, we can get to this lasso. It's called the polygonal lasso tool. And with this one, I can come in and just simply tap once, and you can see this little line starts to be drug out. I can tap again here, and you can see when I want to close the selection off, if I get close to where I started, that little circle appears next to my mouse cursor. So if we tap one more time, we can close that selection off. And again, just like with the other selection tools, we can add to the selection or subtract from it using the Shift or the Alt keys. So maybe I wanted to come in here and subtract this inner triangle out, like so. And there we go, just like that. So let me go ahead and deselect that again. Now, one thing that you probably want to know about this particular tool is that I'm just going to come in here and make some clicks here on this triangle. You can actually back up one click at a time using the backspace key. So maybe I didn't quite get this particular click in the right spot. So I can hit the backspace key and you can see it releases that last click so that I can come in and I can draw it again. Very, very helpful. All right, great. We're going to deselect that. Now, the real advantage to these selection tools we've looked at in this lesson is when you begin to think sort of outside the box with them and think about how we might start to combine them in order to make just the selection we want. So coming back to this circular shape, let's go ahead and go back to our elliptical marquee. And I'm going to come in here and draw out those selections we had previously on this one. Just like so. And I'm going to come in and subtract a selection out of the center. Just like so. Now at this point we've selected this outer ring, but what happens if we want to come in here and select maybe these two kind of straight concrete lines that run on the inside of the circle? Well, let's switch over to our rectangular marquee tool. And we can come in and add to the selection again by holding down the Shift key. If we don't get that quite right, we can come in and hold down spacebar and reposition that. And you can see here that if I release now, I've added to that selection. So I want to come over and do the same thing for this one here. And obviously this image is rotated just a little bit because we have a little edge there that's not selected. So let's come back and grab our polygonal lasso tool and come in and again hold Shift. I'm just going to come in and draw out another selection here. Just like so. And we can come in and do one right about here. All right, great. So in this lesson, we've learned how to use a variety of the core selection tools here inside of Photoshop. We've learned about the rectangular and elliptical marquee tools, as well as the lasso and polygonal lasso. More importantly, we've learned why we make selections here inside of Photoshop. Now, there are some more sort of advanced selection tools, and we're going to begin taking a look at those in the next lesson.